All right, so here we are. We're back with another episode. It's been a minute. I've been kind of spotty with some of the episodes and doing some of the recording. It's been an interesting summer, and part of that has resulted in a little less time to devote to watching films, but also talking about films and really kind of sitting down and thinking about films. But I have gotten to see some things. I really have. I've spent some time this summer looking at a bunch of old films, of course, but going towards some of the newer stuff that's out. And look, I mean, we can get into some of this, but really the thing that I want to focus on is that with this podcast, I set out doing this over 3 years ago now. And originally, the idea was I'm going to watch something brand new to me every day, right? Something I've never seen before. And it was a little bit of a personal challenge, but also I just wanted to learn and see and get a sense for films that were really outside of my comfort zone or just the genres and the filmmakers I was familiar with. I wanted to go in some other directions. And I'll tell you what, over 650 films later, I've really, I feel like I've really done that. Now, of course, I've seen some films that are very much in the same genres and a lot of the same territory as films that I already like, but I've really tried to branch out. And I think the thing that I've come away with now is that having a better sense of the landscape of film and filmmakers and stories, it's given me a deeper appreciation, of course, for everything, but it's really become more of an inspiration to make something, to be a part of something. And it's become a little bit harder to just kind of sit and watch other people's work, other stories, and not kind of pursue some of the things that I've been wanting to do. So, all that to say, look, I kind of found myself at a little bit of a crossroads of like how much of this podcast do I want to still keep going down the road of just watching films and not really creating anything. That's where I took this summer to really pause for a little bit, put the brakes on, and go back and work on some things, right? Some stuff that I kind of had sitting around. I wanted to get in there and noodle around a little bit and get some things maybe going, get some steam built. And so now that that is starting to happen and I've kind of got some things in progress, I feel like I can come back at least and talk about some of the films I've watched. And the other thing is with this podcast, I mean, it's 650 films down. Um, I need to set a little bit of a target because I don't feel like I can keep this up forever. And it's not because I'm not going to keep watching films, but it's just that I feel like there's going to be a point here someday where I'm just not going to have the same kind of time, the same level of dedication even. And this last month or so has really been the proving ground for that is my free time that I've had where I would normally do episodes and kind of put this stuff out, I've been choosing to use that time in other ways. So here we go. This is what I guess I'm going to have to kind of call the beginning of the end. I still want to talk about a lot of movies here. I've got several on my list that I've watched recently that we never got to. So I want to get to those, but I'm also I'm looking at maybe at the light at the end of the tunnel, right? Of how to kind of draw this thing down as we get closer to 1,000 films. How about that? It's not anytime soon. I'm at 650, so we still got some road ahead of us. But it gives me a way to understand or get a sense of how much further I can take this and feel like it's something I have achieved, something that is worth you listening to or contributing to or being a part of or whatever. So I think that's where I'm going to go. I'm heading towards 1,000. This is kind of the setting the goalpost, and now we just got to get to it. So with all that in mind, let's get to some of the films that I've seen in the last, at this point, I guess over the last couple of months. So first of all, let me get to maybe the biggest movie of the summer so far, I think. And we're here at the beginning of July, so some of this may change by the time summer is over. But the film that really I feel like was the standout, and maybe deservedly so, but also uh, just in terms of the scale and the scope and the magnificence of it, is Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. This is a film that I I feel like was set up so much, had so much hype around it. And honestly, I liked Dead Reckoning or Dead Reckoning Part 1 or whatever we were calling it until I saw it again. I saw it a couple of times at home. And I got to admit, it just didn't really hit the same on second, third viewing. And it's not to say it's a bad movie. It's just there's something about the cinematic experience that really works for those films because of the craft involved, because of the sort of technological, uh, uh, just the fireworks that are on display with those films, right? In terms of the stunts, the cinematography, all of that, the pacing, it just feels like it really hits when it's on the big screen. And watching it at home, I think it's no comparison. And so watching The Final Reckoning, it was kind of the thing that was on my mind the whole time because of the previous film. It's like, this is magnificent. This is just a stunning film. Some of the stunts, some of the action in it, and the way some of this stuff is put together, you can tell there are some really highly skilled professionals involved with these films. And watching on the big screen, it definitely makes a difference. It really drives home the level of work that went into this. But the thing I found myself not really as involved or even kind of engaged with was the story of these films. And this one more than the previous one. And it's funny because I heard a couple of interviews. I mean, look, Tom Cruise and everybody, the cast, even Christopher McQuarrie, the writer and director, they were all out there doing the press for this film. So there's interviews galore. And I heard a few times the notion come up that some of the stunts in these films, like they had the idea for the stunt, and then they kind of built scenes and they built the story of the film around those stunts. I don't know how much of that is totally accurate or sort of associating different things that maybe weren't at the time, but if you look at the film that way, it does kind of feel like this is just an excuse to get Tom Cruise to fly in a biplane and have him hanging off of it with nobody in the pilot seat. It's hard to really get a sense of why is this happening. It just feels too convenient. It feels too contrived that the story goes in all these directions, unless you look at it in the sense of like, well, it's just a reason to make this stunt happen. Is that kind of cynical? Yeah, I guess so. But I feel like when you look at it through that lens now, like these films, they kind of don't make a lot of sense. And it's more just from a sort of logical storytelling point of view. They become ridiculous in a way. They don't feel very organic. It does feel forced. It feels contrived. Now, it's not to say that those moments and the way that they're captured aren't just breathtaking. But still, when you kind of step back from it all and wonder, like, wait, how did we get here? And why did this character choose to do that? Or how did this end up happening this way? It starts to get real shaky. It kind of starts to fall apart. And so I'm kind of mixed on these films. I mean, especially the last two. Some of the Mission Impossible films I really come to appreciate over time. The first one, especially, I really, I found myself a little bit confused with it, honestly, when I first saw it. And in the 20 something, 30 years or whatever it's been since then, I've come around to realizing, like, okay, there's just a lot going on in the film. That doesn't mean it's a bad film. It just takes a little more kind of sitting with it to really help it work for you. And maybe that's the case with these later films too, but I feel like they really are like these like showcases for the stunts and the action versus giving me story that leads me to those moments. There is a pocket in some of these films. I think Ghost Protocol and Fallout, I think, if I'm remembering the right two, I think those were the ones that really kind of landed in terms of the story made sense to get us to the stunts that happen because the characters have to do certain things. Like it all kind of fit nicely together. These last two, I just feel like it feels so forced. And it's not that it takes away from being entertained, but it does take away from like how meaningful these films are. So, I got to say it's not quite lived up to it, the expectation that I had for it, but if this is the final film, then I guess so be it. We'll go out with a big bang and leave a real mark on the landscape in terms of this franchise and the years that it's been active and Tom Cruise and his star power and all that. But let's cut while we're ahead and let's move on to other things, I guess. So aside from that, let's see what else. That was Mission Impossible. What's some other films here? Actually, you know what? I want to do this. I did an episode a little while back about a kind of a group of films that were around these, I want to say more serious-minded actors who have kind of landed themselves in these action roles and how sometimes it works, sometimes not so well. And I feel like a lot of it was based on like the Liam Neeson mold, So that was, I guess, 2 episodes ago, but I want to maybe look at the other side of that coin. And I want to look at some films that are starring known, sometimes very serious-minded actresses and roles that have landed them in the same thing, in these like high-octane action roles, and how they have or have not worked out. And one of the first ones is, let's see, it's a film called Heart of Stone. And this is with Gal Gadot and her sort of continuing this run based off of, I really think it's based off of Wonder Woman. It's like there were a couple other movies she was in after Wonder Woman that I think try to capitalize on her as an action star, which is cool. I mean, she's got some moves and she's got a certain charisma, but I think there's a little bit of goodwill that kind of got burnt with that second Wonder Woman movie, right? I can't really say that it was a horrible film, but it certainly wasn't as good as the first Wonder Woman film, but also it was on the downslope of all the DC stuff. And I think it really just kind of paid the price in terms of people not really feeling it. And maybe it's even a little bit disjointed or misguided. I don't know. But here in Heart of Stone, I feel like it's trying to be a couple of different movies at the same time. And some of it feels a little bit like Wonder Woman-ish, like kind of veering or leaning into like superhero territory, but not. She's like a spy, and it's kind of this action film genre stuff that feels very it feels very like Jason Bourne-ish, you know? It's like this is someone who is just exceedingly efficient at taking out bad guys and getting away and accomplishing the mission and all that. But it has this element of like it's not really, I mean, I think it's intended to be like playfulness, but it kind of comes off more corny, especially when we get to some of the action stuff where it just feels very cartoonish, you know? And I remember having the same comment with a couple of the films in that previous episode where like some of the stuff it it just feels like it's out of a video game. And it just feels so like unrealistic, and I kind of don't feel the sense of danger and the risk involved with it. And for this, I mean, I think the idea was to introduce a little bit more of a dramatic turn, but I just didn't really buy the kind of conceit of this, of that she's got this sort of thing, this medical thing that she's like kind of a race against time thing. And she's also got to accomplish the mission, but also her people, things have turned against her. And so she's kind of a one man army or one woman army. And I, I don't know. I feel like this was one of those that's like, look, some kind of contractual obligation, got to do so many films. Here's another one. It, it just didn't really work for me. Another one that I wanted to look at here, which is also very similar, it's a pretty recent release, I think. It's called G20. And this is with Viola Davis, who I just admire as an actor with the power she brings and the gravity she brings to roles, big or small. And recently or much earlier in her career, I think she's always got a presence and a strength and a power. And yet in this film, she's kind of tasked with doing something that is really kind of outside of pretty much anything else she's done. The only other thing, and I'll take this, the only thing I haven't seen of hers that I do want to see, it is on my list, I just hadn't gotten to it yet, is The Woman King. Because I think that's what led to this film, which is Viola Davis is the president of the United States, and she goes to a G20 summit, and basically the whole thing gets taken over, and terrorists are involved, or these kind of shadow forces are involved. All the leaders of these countries are being held hostage, or their lives are in danger. So somebody's got to try and make their way out of this and take down the bad guys. And so it's strange, like White House Down meets Die Hard meets, I don't know, something else. And Viola Davis is always great. And even in the action, I think she kind of works it. She makes it work. But there's another side of this film that it feels very much like that kind of strange, playful, humorous aspect that this should be like a totally knockdown, drag out, like brutal type of incident that would happen, right? Like imagine this really happened. And I guess that's kind of the whole thing with films like this is like, this is so extraordinary that terrorists would somehow take over a G20 summit with all the leaders of the world there and do something so daring, so brazen, to basically take the entire world hostage, right? Is that time to be kind of cracking jokes and, twirling mustaches? I feel like not. And so, but I just don't know where the tone is. I can't tell if it's supposed to be funny or fun, or it's supposed to be deadly serious or not. Honestly, like it gives me vibes of some like action movies from like the early to mid 80s where they hadn't quite figured out the stunts and the visual effects and all that, but they leaned on maybe some of the characters or some of the actors and their own sort of personas or their charisma to kind of get you through the film. You know, you think of like honestly, like some of those old like Chuck Norris films where it's like, man, these are not good stories. They're not even really done well. But if you just like the main character, or if you like, or even Arnold, right? Like you like some of his like one-liners, some of his delivery. I think the idea is like that's supposed to get you through the film, and I kind of feel like that's what this is. It's sort of built on that template, I think, and yet it just doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't work for me. And so, you know, I saw those films. I saw another film called Close. I was on a little bit of a Netflix run right around this time. This was Close with Numi Rapace. Rapace? Rap? Mm. Numi Rapace? Let's say it that way, I guess. You know, the girl with the dragon tattoo and all these other movies she's been in. But this one was maybe a little more interesting because it's not quite what I thought it was. I really thought it was similar type of like one woman army thing where she's going up against this group of bad guys or terrorists or whatever. It's not really that. It's more that she is basically tasked with protecting this young girl, the daughter of this, what do I want to call her? She's a not like a CEO. Well, I mean, I guess there's like a power play involved, and so there's some betrayal going on. And her character, she's basically a former like special operator or special ops. She's a former spy, so on and so on. She's got skills. She knows things, and she has to resort back to those ways to survive and to get through this situation where the bad guys are chasing her down for this girl. And so I think it's kind of light on action. It's a little more, it leans more into the relationship, the dynamic between her and the girl, and then also the family and the powers that are kind of after them. And it does have some pretty interesting like set pieces in it, but for the most part, it is less about the action than about the actual storytelling and these characters and their reasons for doing what they're doing. I appreciate that. I like that. That's what I'm looking for out of all of these films. And the thing here is that I wonder if, you know, I wonder if the balance could have been a little more evenly spread out, if that's the right way to say it. You know, it's like I want movies that have this kind of emotional element to them and the characters and their dynamics. I want that on display, but I feel like make the action work with that, right? Like it's not a bad film. I feel like it was fine, but it's also one that if I hadn't have kind of lined it up with some of these others, I probably would have never seen it. So, you know, something like that. What was the other film here? To Catch a Killer. And this is really not an action film at all, I guess, but this is it's kind of a criminal procedural type of drama with Shailene Woodley, Ben Mendelsohn, and this feels a little more like this is honestly, I don't know the credits to this film necessarily. I probably should, but this feels more akin to something like you'd see in like a Taylor Sheridan show or whatever. Like it's got that kind of really kind of gritty and sort of darker side to it that is all about business, and it's all about the dangers and the unknowns and these people that are kind of wading into territory that they really aren't familiar with. And Shailene Woodley, her character in this, it's kind of like a Clarice Starling, you know, it's someone who is in over their head and dealing with things that are much, much bigger and more dangerous than they have ever dealt with before. Even when it comes down to the ending has kind of a really powerful, very Silence of the Lambs type of closing or climax to it. And I gotta say, I mean, I liked it for what it was. I feel like this film kind of came and went. Like I don't remember this film even coming out, but it seems like it's got a great cast. It seems well done, and yet it just kind of it flew under the radar, I guess. The next film I want to talk about here. Actually, you know what? Here's the thing. So, watching this one, To Catch a Killer, you know, I kind of thought, well, this feels a little familiar. But is there anything else here? And this was on Netflix. I'm like looking around. This kind of came up as a recommendation for me. I don't know how these two are connected necessarily. Well, I do, but as I saw it, I'm like, I don't get what this has to do with the other. Woman of the Hour. That's the film that was recommended as part of, if you liked To Catch a Killer. I didn't necessarily get that, but it's directed by Anna Kendrick. It's starring Anna Kendrick, and it's about a woman who goes on the dating game, if I remember right. It's one of these game shows from like the late 70s and that era. And the interesting thing is that in that show, if you're not familiar, because that show's been gone for a long time, it's one woman, and she's kind of hidden behind a wall from three men, and she has to kind of throw questions at them and try and figure out like who they are and what they're about and if they'd be a good date, right? So it's this little bit of like a matchmaking type situation on live television. And so the thing that runs throughout this film is that she's kind of worked at this thing. She's in like Hollywood or Los Angeles. She's trying to do acting, is not really getting anything, but she gets offered this opportunity to appear on this show. And it's not really what she wants to do, but she'll take it. I mean, it's something. So she does the show. And meanwhile, as that is we're kind of seeing it in pieces as she's taking the role and then preparing for it and then actually going on television, being intercut with other parts of one of the guys that's on the show. And turns out one of the guys, this guy that we're following, is actually a serial killer. And then so the movie kind of gets to the point where we catch up both of those stories at the same time on the show, where they are recording the game show, and he's giving, seems like, the right answers. The things that will make for good television, but also make it so that he can get a date with her. But as we see the things that he's done in the past, now we kind of get the idea of like, okay, well, she's really setting herself up for a nightmare. And so part of the film is like knowing what's coming, but also not knowing what's coming. Like we don't know I don't know how this is going to end up. And so I think it's an interesting sort of approach in building tension and using either the characters not knowing certain things or the characters already knowing certain things, right? Like the killer, he knows what he's done, what he probably expects to do. She doesn't know anything about it. And she's kind of even reluctant or hesitant to even be involved in this. And as those two kinds of things kind of cross paths, that's where the real, I guess, the tension comes in, because we just don't know what's going to happen. Even in the moment when they agree to go on the date and then the show is over and they're both kind of walking to their cars or whatever, and it feels like, well, wait, is this somehow real? Like he's not going to do anything weird or dangerous, or he's not going to hurt her? But then the moment turns, like in an instant. And then we see like, no, this is exactly, what we were afraid of. I think it was a well done effort by Anna Kendrick. I think she really put this together in a smart way. And not only that, but stars in it and plays it pretty subdued, And even the guy who plays the killer, I can't remember his name, but I feel like that's somebody that I must have seen him in other stuff. I just didn't recognize him in here because he's got like this long hair and he's got a sort of like a creepiness to him. But I thought it was pretty well done. And so the last film, kind of in this vein that I want to get to, is Ballerina, right? I don't want to say the full title because it doesn't need it. You know, Ballerina with Ana de Armas and Keanu Reeves, and who else is in it? Ian McShane is back as Winston. Even Lance Reddick is his, I guess this is his last role, his last on-screen performance. He's back, and this is it's an interesting film because I kind of felt like with John Wick 4, like I'm good. I think we ended that in the best possible way. Let's let it be and let's kind of keep moving forward. And when they said this was going to be a movie, and this was like, what, 3 or 4 years ago now? I feel like when this was announced, I really kind of wondered, like, do we need this? You know, do we really need another film in this in terms of a spinoff? If it would have somehow been a sequel to John Wick 4, and maybe we're ending where that one stopped and we're moving in a new direction now, okay. But if this is like falling in between some of the film, like this, I think this film happens between 2 and 3, if I remember right, or maybe it's between 3 and 4. I honestly don't remember at this point, but it happens in a way where it kind of makes sense, but it also gives us a reason to see Keanu Reeves back. And I gotta admit, you know, there's a lot of this film that he is not in. Keanu Reeves is not in maybe 90% of this film. But he shows up early on. Let me just say that. He shows up early on in the film and you think, "Oh, this is the cameo. Okay, wow. It's just like 2 minutes of screen time. Okay, I felt in the moment like this is a little bait and switch. Like this is all we get. Okay, well, he had a walk-on role in one scene and then he's done. Wow." But there's a point later in the film where John Wick shows up again, and this time it's full on John Wick. And, you know, then the question was like, okay, how is this going to work? Because the film sets up these two characters, they have to go head to head. And you already know it's like, there's no way she beats out John Wick. But she's also the main character, so there's no way he beats her out. So how does this work? And there is an interesting sort of plot structural thing that has to happen here that requires her to go on and requires him to kind of back off. So they navigate that, I think, okay. You know, it kind of logically makes sense. It works out. But it also gives us, it's a strange thing it does because the film goes from them kind of converging and getting in each other's path to them then going off in two different directions. And now we kind of have two films going at the same time. For like the last 30 minutes of the film, like it's two different films happening, two different stories going on. I didn't really expect that. That was honestly, that was a great surprise. And I think it was another sort of interesting way to wrap this story up, or at least the plot of the film is that we're introduced to this character. We see her like becoming, not the ballerina, but becoming like she says, like, I want to do what you do. She wants to be a John Wick. But the idea of her having to learn, her getting thrown around, her taking her lumps and figuring out how to be better than guys that are twice her size and have more weapons and outnumber her and all those things. I mean, the whole last act of the film, honestly, it's amazing. It's her in this tiny little like Swedish village or wherever it is in Germany or somewhere, and basically the whole village is after her. And some of the inventiveness and the ways that she takes out these people, it's pretty insane. And so I gotta say, Ana de Armas does a really great job of selling this action, but also selling like the sort of the what is it the sort of mission, the drive that this character has to have. Because I think it would be too easy for a woman to play this character, play this role, and lean more into being, I don't know, being more sexy and all that kind of stuff. And that's not really in this film. It's not really about that. It is about her kind of finding that power in herself, finding that strength, finding the resilience, I guess, to kind of keep moving forward and keep pushing and driving towards her goal, towards the mission. And so I like that the film leans in that direction. It doesn't go the other way, where it's like the whole like the what was the one I said, the Heart of Stone or whatever. It relies more on the actor and her sort of persona and her the way she kind of carries the scene versus like her character, what her character is doing. So Ballerina, I gotta admit, I was a little questioning the sort of motivations of the film, and then also what the results were going to be. But I actually liked it. I thought it was pretty badass. So I don't know. I mean, maybe that was a better way to wrap up some of these films in terms of like, oh, let's find one that's really going to work on some really high levels. So for me, that's probably what I've watched most recently. Actually, I take it back. There are plenty of others that I've watched, but those are the ones that are kind of coming to mind. Um, one that I could probably let me see if there's anything I want to talk about here that doesn't really fit this. I don't know, this genre. Let's say Flight Risk. Did you see Flight Risk? That's the one with Mark Wahlberg and was it Michelle Dockery and what's his name? Come on, Topher Grace. And that's one that it's a Mel Gibson film, which it just seems so off and left field for what, considering the types of films Mel Gibson has done, whether it's Braveheart or Apocalypto or Heartbreak Ridge, not Heartbreak Ridge, what is it? Hacksaw Ridge, right? These films that are very like intense and very brutal and punishing and unflinching. And they're about these big ideas and these big, just force of nature characters, and them doing these really kind of uh, uh, heroic and legendary things in their life. And then we have this, which is none of those things. And honestly, it feels like it was kind of like a throwaway thing to see that, like some of the behind the scenes stuff, like the whole film basically takes place in this little small, like puddle jumper, this tiny little plane. And to see like it's all shot like on a sound stage, and they use some interesting technology like volume type stuff to do it. But the idea like, oh yeah, it's almost this little small three character thriller in this one confined setting, and to what end, to what purpose, what are the bigger ideas of the film? I don't really know. Like I'm honestly surprised like this is directed by Mel Gibson. It just doesn't feel like his style of film, his style of story. I mean, maybe on the technical level it was an interesting exercise, but I wasn't crazy about it. I mean, I wasn't crazy about the execution. I wasn't crazy about the story, even the characters. They didn't really have any. I don't know. I didn't really feel kind of invested in them. So I just don't know. I can't really say I enjoyed it that much. Let's see, a couple of others here maybe. The Electric State. Man, I don't know what to say about the Electric State. I really don't. I feel like I really liked the premise of the book that it's based on. I certainly like the sort of visual aesthetic, the style, the sort of tone of the art, and the, I guess, the conceit of the whole thing. But as a film, I mean, this is directed by the Russo brothers, who, come on, all the Marvel stuff, you would think this is like right up their alley. And I mean, we've got Chris Pratt in this. We've got what's her name, Billy Joe Johnson or whatever her name is. I'm so, well, you know who Bobby Millie Brown. I think that's her name, right? So this feels like this has got a stacked lineup. Like this has got some talent involved. And I mean, there's plenty of voice characters in here too, with all the, I don't know, the robots, the animated characters. But I think it's probably a case of like trying to pack too much into a film when maybe this could have been like a series, like a limited run series, like 6 episodes or something. There's just so much in this film that's happening, and none of it really seems to fire in the right ways at the right time, and it all feels kind of half-assed. And I don't mean visually. I mean it's actually pretty stunning, like the visual effects and some of the design work in the world that is built for this film. But to what end? Same kind of thing is like, what is this film really trying to say? I get the theme of the story, but I don't feel like it lands in the film. It works better in a book, I guess. I don't know. Real missed opportunity, really kind of a disappointment. Let's see. Was there anything else here more recently? I'll just mention this because I saw it, Piece by Piece, which I maybe this kind of lines up with the Electric State. Is that this is the Lego version of the life of Pharrell Williams, and it was cool to like see a documentary that explored his background, his influences, his actual like output, like his music, his contribution to pop music and hip hop and R&B, all of the hits that he's behind, even some that you probably didn't even realize. I think the thing that just keeps this film from really working is the whole Lego thing. Like the whole bit, it gets old after probably like 20 minutes. And honestly, I feel like it's a shield. I feel like it's used as a shield in this film because if you grew up with the beginnings of the Neptunes and Pharrell's kind of start in hip hop, you know that his music, his sort of style, his taste, it was not Lego flavored. I'm sorry. It was not family friendly, it was not kid friendly. It was very much R-rated rock star shit. And so to now kind of come back all these years later and kind of candy coat the whole thing, I think that's really, it feels kind of disingenuous. Like you're not giving me real Pharrell, you're giving me Lego version. And that's not, for people who know, that's not the real Pharrell. That's not the real reason for the music. And I don't know. I feel like this is the sort of documentary I would be interested in watching. I just don't want to see it like this. Because there's even a moment in the documentary where he gets very emotional. He's talking about some things that he really went through in life and how they affected his creativity and his output, and how he had to overcome some of these things and some of the struggles, right? Personal wise. And it's hard to hear that, and I mean, the sort of clash of hearing that and trying to empathize with that and relate to that, but then you're watching this being said and conveyed through a Lego head that is shedding a tear. It's like, no, man. Like, I would rather see him and the people that are interviewed in the documentary. I would rather see them for real, their real faces, expressing these things that they've gone through and the trouble they've had. This watching little toys talk to me, like, that doesn't do it, man. That doesn't, honestly, it took me out of it. I'm like, this is almost like ridiculous. And I shouldn't feel like laughing at this. And so that's where I just feel like, man, it's such a misstep, you know? I mean, I get that there are parts of the film and as it relates to the music, is like you want to use that sort of lens to express either the joy or the sort of energy or the movement of the music. But when it came down to like the real people and their real motivations and their real struggles, it's like I can't connect seriously with a Lego head. I'm sorry. It just doesn't work for me. So I don't know. There's probably a few more here. We'll save those for another episode. I just wanted to catch back up, see how everybody's doing. Hope you're doing well. It's been tough here and there. Sometimes the world feels a little upside down lately, but I'm still here, still watching films. So that's it for now. If you want to hear some older episodes with other films, you can go to filmstreak.com. If you've already found this because of going there, thank you. Thanks for checking this out. Thanks for stopping by. And we'll check you later. In the meantime, still the same. You know what it is. You know what to do. Go watch something new.